She's as beautiful as the day we lost her. Hello and welcome back to another Creator Experience server video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Fugue, or if you have never heard that term used ever, you've probably called her Fugue or something like that. But for those of you who aren't caught up on Star Rail, but might be watching this and like the last you played was like 1.2 or something, this is Tingyun. Kind of. I'm not going to go into the lore of all of it, but this is our newest 5-star Fire Nihility character, which if I had a nickel for every 5-star Fire Nihility Foxian character, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't that much, but kind of weird that it's happened twice. Their ultimates also look really similar. Anyways, in today's video, I'm going to be going over my first impressions of Fugue, playing her a little bit before she releases. Now, all of the stats in this video and all of basically everything about this video is technically subject to change. We do have a little bit before Fugue actually comes out, but I will say most of the time, if they do change things, it's usually not something so significant as to change the identity of the character. Usually it might just be like a small modifier or like fixing typos or something. So that's enough yapping. Let me get into what Fugue does. Man, I had some thoughts about what this character was going to be, but she superseded my expectations. So right before I go in and show you what she does, I just want to show you a couple things. First off, I'm using a 4-star light cone. This is Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat. Every time I play this character, I think she's a Harmony for some reason in my head, but then I go to her light cones and I'm like, oh yes, these are all Nihility light cones. This light cone shreds enemy defense, which is super great on basically every single Nihility in the game. And there are other light cones you can use as well, but this one is probably going to be your best option, your best case scenario. But Eyes of the Prey is also okay because it has some effect hit rate. So if you superimpose this, it can be decent. You are going to need effect hit rate on this character. Her signature light cone gives break effect to her, and when an enemy gets their weakness broken, it has a chance to apply debuff to that enemy that increases their break damage taken, which is different from your break effect multiplier itself. So break damage taken does help a fair bit, but honestly, you don't even really need her signature light cone. It's going to be decent, but you have a lot of other options, including Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat, which in my opinion is going to be the best 4-star for her. As for relics, I'm giving her break sets, and also Agni Lantern for the extra speed and for the extra break effect against fire weak enemies, which you may end up using her against a lot. Lastly, max traces and Eidolon 0. All right, so here I'm running a bit of an unconventional team where I'm actually not running a main damage dealer. Well, I am, but their role doesn't show that they're a damage dealer, which I think is really funny. So let me just show you what we're cooking, okay? All right, so here we are on Fugue. Now, my Fugue is actually built very fast. She actually has a ton of speed, especially when you account for Ruan Mei. For those of you wondering what Fugue does a couple different things. First off, take Harmony Trailblazer's kit where you can add super break damage whenever you break an enemy or whenever you hit an enemy that's already weakness broken. Fugue has that built into her kit as well. Except the main difference between her and Trailblazer is that this is built into her talent. So you don't actually need to have your ultimate up or anything. Simply for being on the field, you will get super break damage. But that's not all her talent does. Her talent also gives what's called Cloud Flame Luster, which if you played the MOC where you had Exo Toughness, this is Exo Toughness. It accounts for 40% of the enemy's original toughness, and when you break their original toughness, then you can hit the Exo Toughness. Now, a couple things about Exo Toughness. If you break an enemy, they are broken. The Exo Toughness is just an extra opportunity for you to do another break on top of that. This affects characters like Himiko, where she actually gets stacked based off of enemies that you break. And a cool thing about her Exo Toughness is that if you break an enemy's Exo Toughness, it does the same amount of break damage as the original toughness, not just the 40% Exo Toughness. So you're doing full damage even for less break, which is super nice. And much like Harmony MC, when you break an enemy, it delays the enemy's action by 15%. And just as another bonus with her traces, you can actually give bonus break effects to your teammates based on Fugue's break effect. But that's all just built into her talent. So on this team, Link Shaw is actually the dedicated breaker. I'm going to skill her. What that is essentially going to do is give Linkshot some more break effect, and it lasts for 3 turns, much like regular Tingyun's attack buff. But the other thing that does is it allows you to break enemies even if they're not weak to the actual type that the character is. It only does 50% of the initial break. However, this means that you can take anyone into any content and they can break anything. And lastly, the character that's partnered with Fugue has a base chance to decrease enemies' defense. So let me show you what I'm talking about. First off, we're gonna just activate Harmony Trailblazer's Super Break because I have something cool to show you with that as well. So we check this out, and this should have a defense reduction, and it hits every single enemy. Now, something else I want to point out about Fugue, and this is probably where a lot of people were initially confused. The reason I'm using Fugue, Ruan Mei, and Harmony MC with Linksha as a DPS is because you guys already seen a ton of Rappa footage and Firefly footage. You guys don't need me to show you more of that. You already know how it's gonna look. But I did want to include both Fugue and Harmony MC on the same team. And the reason is because Super Break, some people think of Fugue as a replacement for Harmony MC, and that is totally okay. That can happen, that can work. But when you take two characters that both apply their own separate instances of Super Break, you actually get two instances of Super Break. It doesn't just stack up and add up to one thing. It doesn't overwrite the other. Both Super Breaks will proc, and you will see two Super Breaks go off with Ruan Mei's basic attack. Boom, so two Super Breaks that both went off at the same time. This means that instead of running Ruan Mei with Firefly or Rappa, you can actually just go ahead and run Harmony Trailblazer and Fugue together, and you get two Super Breaks, which is pretty crazy. I'm not gonna lie. All right, so that's 223k damage from Linksha's Bunny. By the way, if you're wondering what light code I'm using on Linksha, just for reference, this is post-op conversation. Memories of the Past, and Dance, Dance, Dance. So these are all 4-star light codes. But now Tingyun's turn is back, and if you'll notice, Fugue actually has 2 stacks left. Her buff lasts for 3 turns. For reference, you guys, this is based on Fugue's turns and not Linksha's turns, which is just so nice. I'm gonna go ahead and let the Banui attack, and then I'll ult. So we're gonna go ahead and use basic attack on Fugue, and then you'll notice that we have our ultimate ready on Fugue. Now, Fugue's ultimate, honestly, guys, a lot of people, they play supports for their ultimates because their ultimates usually do something crazy. Fugue's ultimate actually is completely unnecessary, but nice to have. Basically, she can break enemy toughness regardless of their weakness type, and it does some damage. What this is useful for, in my opinion, is if you're trying to save yourself a cycle, you can use this early to break, or make it so you can break enemies faster, or you can save it for the following cycle if you're just gonna wander 0 cycle it, and that's totally fine as well. So I'm actually going to save that because I don't need it right now. Huge bunny damage and Harmony Trailblazer damage. Now I'm gonna Linksha. That way we get the bunny right away. Go and skill just for the break. Bunny gonna come out, do another 229k. And as a reminder, we get 2 instances of Super Break. I'm gonna go ahead and just basic attack with Tingyun, and then right at the start of the next wave, I should be able to just use her ultimate, which is going to be super nice. So here we go. And if you guys want to watch this in slow-mo, just so you can see the effects of it, because it is quite nice. It's a pretty ultimate. And Jiaosho. Surprise Jiaosho. No, that's a beautiful ultimate animation, though. We did some break, you know. Now it is her turn to reapply her skill. All right, so we skill on Linksha. We're gonna skill on Harmony Trailblazer. We're going to skill on Ruan Mei. And then Banui should be attacking here in just a moment. Double Banui attack. I'm gonna go ahead and basic attack with Fugue to get a skill point back. And dude, the break damage from this ends up just being so crazy. I'm actually gonna use the Linksha's ultimate right away just to pull Banui up. See if we can do a little bit more damage a little faster. 635 break, followed up by 302. So keep in mind, guys, the HP for MOC has like drastically increased. It has gotten ridiculously high. So the fact that we're doing this much damage, it looks incredible, but the reason things are dying so slow is because they just jacked up the HP a fair bit. Gonna basic attack here. And Fugue herself is going to be doing a fair bit of damage on her own. We skill on Linksha, Banui moves up. He's gonna give us energy, so kind. Oh, now they're mad. But it doesn't matter because this team's DPS is a sustainer, so we basically just don't die ever. Now, I can only basic attack here because I didn't manage my skill points well. But I can immediately ult right after, bring Banui up, and do a ton of extra damage. Oh, that is so crazy. I'm going to basic attack here because Ruan Mei is going to have to skill once again, just so we get the break efficiency. And then Fugue is going to go. I'm not going to have her ultimate just yet, but that's okay. We clear this cycle. We skill with Linksha, and they're dead. So, for reference, that was 2 cycles with a support as the main DPS. And also, just, you know, for more clarification, that is not Linksha's best DPS build. All right, there are builds that you can use with Linksha that are meant to do that are meant to be way better. That was a regular healer Linksha build with a 4-star light code, and it 2-cycled MOC 12. And for further proof, just so you guys know, this is like Iron Cavalry, Forge of Kabagni Lantern, Traces, E0. You know, all of these characters are E0 actually. Our Ruan Mei was E0 as well. Harmony Trailblazer was E6, but that's free, so I don't think anyone's gonna complain about that. That wouldn't make sense to me. But anyways, That's the power of Fugue and Ling Sha, of course, because you know she she carried. Fugue is a crazy powerful character. The amount of value she's adding is insane, and that value would not be possible without the help of some stellar supports. But real quick, before I show you her best teams and what I tried and tell you all about that, I showed you what set she's using, but I did not show you her main stats. Since she has a chance to apply a defense shred, you are going to want effect hit rate. There are also other parts of this that could be very helpful depending on the light cone that you're using. Things that have base chance to apply, effect hit rate's gonna help with that. So we give her an effect hit rate body, speed boots, HP orb, and break effect rope. You don't need energy regen unless you're doing a very specific setup meant for her to dish out a lot more break and damage herself, but it's just not necessary, guys. This doesn't apply buffs or anything. It just breaks enemies and can do break damage. So ER rope is just, in my opinion, not super necessary, and effect hit body is what you're gonna want. But okay, now that you've seen the damage you can do with a support, what kind of teams are you running? Well, you don't actually have to run that team that I just ran. I was just running that to show you that you can clear with an abundance character with these 3 supports, but you're usually only going to use 2 and you're going to use a break character, right? Most of you guys are playing Firefly, Rappa, Boot Hill, other characters like that. So the first team that I want to showcase is a Firefly team with Trailblazer and Ling Sha. Now, again, I could have cleared with Firefly, but I thought it was funnier to use Ling Sha, and you'll see plenty of footage of Firefly, Ling Sha, and Rappa and stuff in my full guide. I do want to say though that when I was clearing with Firefly, it took me 3 or 4 cycles on my multiple runs. Ling Sha took 2, and one time she took 3. So I'm not saying Ling Sha is better than Firefly, but you'll have a real easy time if you use this sustainer that cleanses everything with the other supports. Firefly's still hella good though. She easily clears this content, and using Fugue and Trailblazer together is going to help you get extra super break damage. You get 2 instances of super break. Now, the reason I'm not running Ron Mei here is because the extra super break damage you're getting ends up, in my opinion, and in some of the math that I've seen, outweighing the break efficiency, because most of the time, Firefly's gonna take 2 hits to break enemies anyways, unless they're small enemies and then you just 1-hit break them. But even with Ron Mei, a lot of the tougher enemies, a lot of the elites will still take 2 hits, and without Ron Mei, a lot of the time with other characters on your team, they'll still take about 2 hits with Firefly. So the break efficiency does help you increase your damage, but just running double super break ends up being crazy good. So that's why I like to run both of them together. But that does mean that if you were looking forward to running like Remembrance MC or something and getting Fugue, maybe you're a little disappointed. Well, I don't want you to actually be disappointed, because you can still run Ron Mei. That hasn't changed. You can still run Fugue and Ron Mei, and it ends up being stronger than Harmony, Trailblazer, and Ron Mei, just because Fugue also has that defense shred to her and has some like break buffs and stuff for your team. So this is totally fine, and this is possible. And of course, if you don't have Ling Sha, you can just use Gallagher because he's a Giga Chad. But for those of you guys who like to be a little silly goofy, you can use the Ling Sha team too. You don't need a sustainer because Ling Sha is your sustainer and your DPS. Now, I do want to show you guys some characters that Fugue works very well with. In my opinion, Firefly is going to be one of the best, especially because she applies fire weakness, and it just makes it so you don't have to worry about the 50% weakness break reduction when you could just have the full weakness break. But Rappa also works great as well, and in my opinion, Fugue was actually made more for Rappa, but just also works very well with Firefly. And the reason is because Rappa's MOC was Exo Toughness. Being able to break enemies multiple times with Rappa helps her get stacks way faster. I believe the stacks are called charge, by the way. There's not like a Himiko stack system or anything, but it's gonna help Rappa do a ton more damage. And also, every time you break the extra Exo Toughness, you know how that's gonna end up being just more and more damage. And of course, Himiko is a huge winner of this, because when enemies have Exo Toughness that's 40%, it doesn't really matter if they're an elite. They don't really have much more to break anyways, and all the enemies are gonna get broken from like a basic attack from Arlen. So Himiko ends up being giga buffed by Fugue. Fugue and Himiko, especially depending on the content, could be very strong in Firefly's place, but most of the time Firefly is just gonna be easier to use and a little bit more straightforward. And honestly, if you're at E0 Himiko and like E0 5 stars and stuff, it's just gonna be a lot better. Firefly solos, but Ling Sha solos Firefly. Shui, I also wanted to bring up. This was a character that was a hybrid crit DPS and break DPS, and she was one of the first characters that had like internal break scaling that affected her damage output. And now that super break is out, Shui has a lot of other options for how you build her and how she does damage. But with Fugue, it's even crazier just because you have the Exo Toughness, which is even more break opportunities, and Fugue allows you to break on any element. For those of you who don't know, Shui makes it so that whenever you reduce enemy toughness, she gets stacks of karma. And for those of you who don't know, her Eidolons do make it so she takes less stacks to unleash a follow-up attack. So basically with Fugue, it doesn't really matter if you're playing her into Quantum or not. because you can just always break. And that's super great. That is a huge win for Shui. Honestly, going forward, there's going to be a lot more characters that work with Fugue, and like they're not done with super break. There's going to be characters that come back as breakers, and they might even make a summon that does break as well, just to throw us a bone, right? So honestly, guys, after looking at Sunday and Fugue, the value that both of these characters bring is crazy, but Fugue ended up being way stronger than I even thought she would be, especially based on that live stream. I knew the exo toughness thing was gonna be big. I had no idea until we actually got to test it and see how it worked that you could stack super breaks. And honestly, I just didn't know all the details until I got hands-on. She's a great character. I was really surprised. Now, real quick, just to show you her eidolons, E1 is going to be very helpful. Ally target with Foxy and Prayer increases their weakness break efficiency by 50%. Keep in mind, weakness break efficiency increase is great, and this is actually what Ruanmei gives. So this basically makes it so you don't need Ruanmei, you just can use Fugue, which is great. But this is most effective with fire characters because then you don't have to worry about the toughness reduction percent being cut in half by Fugue normally. E2 on Fugue is going to be helpful for energy. It makes it so that when an enemy's weakness gets broken, Fugue gets 3 energy. It's basically Thief of Shooting Meteor, but as an eidolon. But the good part about E2 isn't really the energy even, because as I mentioned before, even though the energy can be nice because it helps you break enemies a little faster, the big news about this is the action forward. This is a built-in dance. When you use her ultimate, you get ally action forward by 24%. So this is Ruanmei, this is Dance, and Thief of Shooting Meteor. So you get 3 huge buffs in E1, E2. I don't think these are super game breaking or anything, but if Fugue and Tingyun, you know, if you are scared of them getting necked again and you want to make sure that you pull the 5-star before that happens, these are, I mean, these are pretty okay. I just don't think they're as important as some of the other ones, like Link Shots, for example. If you were to get Link Shots, this is going to add a ton of damage to your team if you're playing with Fugue, but this will help all of the characters that you pair Fugue with. So keep that in mind, but it's like I said, it's not necessary. We were playing her at E0 and she was already insane. E3 is a skill and basic attack level up, and E4 increases your break damage dealt by 20%, specifically the ally that gets targeted with her skill. That's pretty nice, not insanely necessary. It's just like another buff. Honestly, 3 through 5 are not going to be that crazy in comparison to 1, 2, and 6. 5 is an ult and talent level up, and 6 is going to increase Fugue's weakness break efficiency by 50%. But what it's going to do is make it so that her skill actually gives Foxy and Prayer to all allies. This basically just makes it so that your entire team can break regardless of weakness, and they're all gonna get the extra break effect buff. And on top of that, they can all apply defense shred, so permanent defense shred. So do with that information what you will. I'm gonna make a full guide on Fugue, probably to release right when she comes out. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend giving it a watch because it'll have a more thorough, in-depth guide and look at the character, and it'll talk about all the teams and show you a bunch of different b-roll of different synergies and things like that. So stay tuned for that one. But my first impressions of Tingyun, Fugue, sorry, incredible character, genuinely, like, actually insane. My only skepticism is going into summon meta. If summon meta ends up just power creeping everything we had in break meta, then even though she is going to be good and maybe helps your super break stuff keep up with the new summon meta, it's possible that she could just not be enough. So we honestly won't know until we get to see more of her. And if you're skeptical, you can always pull her on rerun. Anyways, with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.